Had the chance this weekend to be in the arena for a couple of Remembrance Day games. Dan Mahar, can I get a seconder for the reminder to all followers of this great game at this level that at the end of the season, the OHL, the WHL, and the Q play for the Memorial Cup?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, right? And that's why I've got my Royal Canadian Air Force garb on today as a final note on our Remembrance Day weekend.
Excellent job with the attire. I know that we like to, especially in sports, nicknames, short forms, whatever. It's not the Mem Cup. It's not the Memmer. I know, and fine if you want to say that. But we would like to reinforce, and I just got my seconder, that it is the Memorial Cup. And what an opportunity this past weekend in Kitchener for the Remembrance Day game, then on Sunday in Oshawa at the Remembrance Day game. And let me tell you a little bit about Saturday in Owen Sound when I was in the media room getting ready for the game. And who do I run into but former NHLer Eric Boulton? How do you like that? What are the chances in little old Grey County in the scenic city of Owen Sound, me and Eric Boulton in the same media room?
Did you challenge him to a fight, though? That's what I want to know.
Come on. Why you got to be that way? There's
I just
no reason. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I got to say, tons of respect, mad respect, as the kids might say today, okay? And here's why. Eric, obviously, is the father of both Ryder and Sawyer Boulton. And last year on this podcast, Sawyer Boulton had a bit of a rough ride because he spent a lot of time suspended. In fact, early in the season, he was running about almost as many games suspended as he had played. And we talked about it. And we weren't hard on the human, the person at all. We were just pointing out that here's a guy that plays the game with some bite, trying to figure out where that line is in junior hockey. And he learned that he had crossed the line a number of times. So I can certainly understand if I'm Sawyer's father, a la Eric, it might be kind of tough to hear, thinking, who are these two knuckleheads picking on my kid all the time? But I'll tell you what, Eric came up, introduced himself, and said, I enjoy your commentary. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, really though? Like, do you really enjoy it? Or do you really want to punch me in the face right now? But that's not how we do things. That's not how Eric does things. That's not how I do things or how Dan does things. We had a really nice conversation, checked in on Sawyer, loving life in Lehigh. And then as a father, just imagine this, Dan. There's Eric going, he's got his own apartment now. He hasn't burned the place down yet, right? It's this proud father moment. And look, we wish absolutely nothing but the best to the young man as he pursues his professional hockey dream. We wish nothing but the best for Ryder as he continues to toil with the London Knights this season. And we wish nothing but the best to Eric as he watches his two boys try to do what he did. You'll remember Eric Boulton from this league, I am sure, former Oshawa general, former Sarnia Sting. He played for Sarnia when, yes, of course, Mark Hunter was the coach there. And that's one of the other things about this story, kind of the subplot that I like so much. Mark Hunter coaching Eric, the Boulton boys playing for the Knights, Eric connected to the organization because it's the organization that Mark owns and runs as the general manager. I love that kind of loyalty. I love that kind of respect for one another. So again, just thinking back on last season, even when we talked about the Knights as a team, kind of reintroducing that heavy physical game to the Ontario Hockey League. And we talked about it towards the end of last season and the beginning of this one. I think other teams have started to follow that. It won the Knights an OHL championship last season. Obviously, there are some ingredients there that other teams would like to duplicate. And I talked about it last season in the same vein as the old Conn Smythe line, right? If you can't beat them in the alley, you can't beat them on the ice. And the London Knights were showing that they could get it done both ways, physically and on the ice on their way to that championship. Again, didn't say anything derogatory about the players, about the personalities, just observed the way the Knights played the game, a big, heavy, physical game. Lots of respect for Eric Boulton. And that conversation we were able to have, when you meet face to face, it's a whole different hockey game.
Yeah, and I've heard repeatedly, if you talk to these tough guys in the NHL, without fail, they're almost always the greatest guys off the ice, right? They're super involved with the community. They're just great people to talk to, and they do a tough job, and everyone knows it. And when you talk about the beat 'em in the alley versus beat 'em on the ice, I mean, you look at the London Knights, Mike, and when is the last time they were out muscled in the alleys, right? Almost never. So it's a formula. It's a recipe that others can copy. We're not trying to turn this back into a goon league or anything like that, but you have to have that element. And I think the Knights have proved that over and over. Though I will say, I just, even for charity, I would have liked to see you and Eric Boulton have a go at it.
You want to see, you're such a knuckle dragger, Mahar. You're like so many other people that try to get under my skin this way, think it's all about the pugilism, right? It's not. Grown men can have conversations face to face respectfully, even if they don't necessarily enjoy one another's commentary. But Eric said he enjoys the commentary on this podcast, so we're happy to have him as a listener after his time with Oshawa and Sarnia, of course, in the Ontario League. It was the Sabres, the Thrashers, the Devils, the Islanders in the show. Guy put in more than 650 NHL games. And yes, by the way, more than 1,400 penalty minutes in that time. But anyway, and I will also add this just to kind of tie a bow on the story. I recently spoke with a coach who had just played the London Knights and said their third and fourth lines basically ran us out of the building because they know their role. They go out there, they bang, they crash, they wear you down. And by the end of the night, we didn't have anything left in the tank. So there you go. Again, we'll just go back to the recipe. Seems to be working just fine, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, when you have players that do that, it buys so much space for the top six, right? If these players can keep up and they skate well enough and then get in on the forecheck, not only does it wear down the other team physically, but they're a little less aggressive on your top six because they know they're going to have to pay the price the next couple of shifts. So it absolutely works if you can find the right mix of guys, the guys that combine and do that. And yeah, by no means was I suggesting that you need to fight Eric Boulton based on anything that's been said in this podcast. I just think it'd be entertaining for the viewing audience, Mike. That's all.
Again, entertaining because I'm the one getting in the ring with the guy, but for charity. You might, yeah, of course.
I'll donate.
Of course you will. I would do just about anything for charity. All right. Dan and I get a little concerned if we don't hear from you. So remember, email inbox is always open, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. I know you're waiting for the big story of the week. Don't worry. Dan and I will have plenty to say. We could devote the entire episode to that NCAA ruling. We're going to get there. But I did want to share a couple of emails that came in, ohlpodcast@rogers.com. One from our buddy Johnny 807. Johnny started emailing us last year. And if you know anything about area codes in this fine province of ours, 807 is Northwestern Ontario, where the city of Thunder Bay resides. And we were talking a couple of weeks back about potential expansion sites. And I came back to it a week or so later and said, you know what? I'm not going to be so dismissive of Thunder Bay. If we get the right level of corporate sponsorship and deep enough pockets in the ownership group and money from the province or the feds for an arena, all kinds of, I had ideas. Let me tell you, I had ideas, and Johnny 807 pissed all over my ideas. Thanks for nothing, Johnny. But because he's Johnny 807, he knows a thing or two. And I won't read every word of it because he clearly, this is a well-connected individual, but he goes into the politics up in Thunder Bay. He goes into the waterfront in Thunder Bay, which has been about as much of a disaster as the waterfront in Toronto, I think, when it comes to develop it, not develop it, never really get it done. Federal government, Johnny says, will not put any money towards an arena in Thunder Bay. This goes back to former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. He's dropping all kinds of names. And again, sounds to me like Johnny knows what he's talking about because he hails from the 807. So he says Thunder Bay will always have a hockey market that is rich in talent and player development. That will never change. And it speaks to the quality of the coaches at the introductory levels of the game. Unfortunately, just like any small town anywhere, the only chance at success is to escape the town and enter the real world. And that's where Johnny 807 is now, despite the fact he still has that handle with us. He makes his home in Southwestern Ontario, is a Knights supporter, and a fan of this podcast. Love hearing from you, Johnny. It's funny because when Johnny was talking about all of those names and the politics in Thunder Bay, I recalled my time working up there. And Ken Boschkoff was the mayor when I was working in Thunder Bay more than 25 years ago now. And so I went online today, and guess who the mayor of Thunder Bay is right now?
Ken Boschkoff.
Ken Boschkoff. And the funny thing is, he left the mayor's office, became MP for a while, tried unsuccessfully to get the mayor's job back about a decade ago, and he won it again in 2022. So Ken Boschkoff, everything old is new again in Thunder Bay. Leo Tonaguzzi was the police chief up there at the time. He is not still the police chief. Just throwing out some names from Thunder Bay past for our buddy Johnny 807.
Yeah, it's nice these small towns in Canada the pace of change is much slower, which appeals to a lot of people, but sometimes the pace of change is too slow in the political realm too. You've got the same 5 or 6 people holding political dominion. But yeah, I think Johnny makes a good point. We knew it's a long shot to suggest Thunder Bay. There's a lot working against it, but we appreciate Johnny sharing those details to make it even less, or even more of a pipe dream, I should say.
I don't want to give up on it just yet, but again, Johnny's email to ohlpodcast@rogers.com seems to come from a pretty knowledgeable place. Josh also dropped us a note into the inbox. Howdy, fellas. Gee, I wonder what you'll be talking about on this next episode of the OHL podcast. I'm just going to drop one comment here. Adam Valentini to the Kitchener Rangers. Let's go double M. That would be General Manager Mike McKenzie in Kitchener. Make it happen, because the landscape, she is a shifting, Dan Mahar.
Well, I know Kitchener Ranger fans would be salivating at getting Adam Valentini, and who knows? Maybe it is down the road. What I'm hearing, it's not going to be imminent. And I think there's a lot of factors that come into play when people talk about, well, we just drafted this kid or that kid, and they're in the USHL. They're not doing that well. They're in the BCHL. They're not doing that well. There's still a lot of things to iron out, if you will. One being the 16-year-old limit that these OHL teams face. And a team like Kitchener has kind of maxed out their 16-year-olds right now, so they can't just drop one into the lineup without some finagling going on behind the scenes. The other thing, too, is there's nothing to indicate all these kids are upset with their current situation and are necessarily going to abandon their leagues to jump for a year or two ahead of their NCAA commitment. Having said that, we are going to see a number of them. Might just not be Adam Valentini anytime soon. If there's a chance of him coming out, expect more next year, but stranger things have happened. But we are going to see a sprinkling throughout the league in the next few weeks, particularly on teams that don't have 4 16-year-olds and or 2007, 2008 born players, or 2006 and 2007, I should say.
All right. Take that, Josh. If Johnny 807 is going to piss all over my Thunder Bay OHL expansion dreams, Dan Mahar is going to piss all over your Adam Valentini to Kitchener dreams. Take that. That's what you get.
I wasn't trying to shoot it down entirely. I'm hoping I'm totally wrong. I don't think imminent would be the word I'd use.
All right. So what does the NCAA decision mean anyway? Oh, it means so many things. So many things. And we will get into them next. Stay with us on the OHL podcast. The quest for the Stanley Cup, as you know, is underway right now. The puck has dropped on the 24-25 season, and we want you to get in on all the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Now, if you're a first-time user and just getting started, don't worry, it's easy, and you can start with something simple like picking your favorite team to win. Just go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. Just to show you how easy it is, even a guy who is essentially tech illiterate can do it. I'm going there right now. I'm on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I'm looking at my favorite team, and where are they? There they are, my Maple Leafs, and they are on the money line, a minus 148 versus Ottawa this week. Now, remember, odds are subject to change. I'm not necessarily endorsing a bet on the Maple Leafs, but if that's your team, like it's mine, it's that easy to go and find them. We want to make this worth your while, too, when you use the DraftKings Sportsbook app. So if you're new to DraftKings, pay attention. New customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet Just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Dan, the NCAA ruling that came down just last week has shifted the ground beneath us in junior hockey. Where do you want to start on the impact of that ruling on the league, of course, that we pay the most attention to, the Ontario Hockey League?
So many places we could start, Mike. We already referenced some of the players that are property of OHL teams that may jump sooner than later. We can talk about what it means long term with some teams potentially looking to join the OHL, and even some concern expressed, I heard this week, about the viability of smaller markets long term. So there's a lot of places, Mike, but I don't know. Did you want to start with players that might come to the O?
Sure, wherever you want to go.
All right. Well, we just talked about Adam Valentini, who's playing for Chicago Steel, team that used to kind of be stocked by agents who had players in Ontario, bring them to the Chicago as a pipeline to the NCAA. That ownership relationship has changed. That's a team that's kind of on the downswing a little bit, not a strong team this year. We've got a few other teams in the USHL where one of the aspects, Mike, that I think fans might struggle to understand with the USHL versus the OHL. I always get asked, well, what's the caliber difference? Well, yes, the CHL/OHL is a little higher caliber. The USHL has been improving. One thing, though, that skews that a little is USHL tends to be a little bit of an older league. So the players that are 16, 17 don't get as much ice time. They tend to be stocked up with 18, 19-year-olds. So there actually can be a little more opportunity in the OHL, particularly for the 16, 17-year-old players, which is why you might see some of them jump. But the one thing I think is worth discussing, Mike, I'm interested in your thoughts on it, is it's hard to drop a young player into an OHL roster mid-season like this and expect much of them. Even ice time, the teams kind of are locked in. You get some teams with injury concerns where maybe they have a slot, but a lot of teams are having enough trouble fitting their current players in and getting them ice time that dropping another body in now, it creates a bit of a chain reaction up and down the league, really. So I think there's a lot to consider with the rulings here and what may or may not happen, but I expect certainly mid-season you won't see the landslide that you might see in the offseason.
So I'm going to drop what I think is the most important element of all of this on you in just a few minutes. So stick around for that. I promise you it'll be worth your while. I mean, if you want to hit fast forward and, go 15 seconds at a time or 10 seconds at a time, that's your choice. But I'll get to what I think is the most important thing in all of this. But to what you just talked about, Dan, do you think maybe that if we start entertaining the idea of this kind of player movement and finding room for players of a certain age on various rosters, et cetera, we aren't presupposing, maybe even a little bit too much, that there's going to be a wave of player movement the moment August the 1st, 2025 rolls around and this rule goes into effect?
I think a lot of people are guessing, Mike, and I think when you see some of the hits that leagues like the USHL are going to take, you're going to have some players that do want to jump to the OHL or CHL for slightly better competition, better minutes. So, but how many and what that landslide will be, don't forget that a lot of these kids have commitments they're honoring. If they're in a good situation, good billet situation, getting lots of minutes, still have their NCAA commitment, there's not as much pressure for them to jump as some may think. And keep in mind, a lot of the kids that will want to jump are the ones who maybe the year didn't go as well or isn't going as well for them as they had thought. They're maybe slipping a little on the radar. They're worried about that NCAA commitment. So, of course, they're contacting their CHL rights owners and saying, hey, can we come there? We kind of want to change our situation here. But, I mean, it's a double-edged sword because the CHL team might say, well, a year ago we were really high on you, but things haven't really gone that well. You haven't developed that well. We've got a couple kids in here now who are playing well. So it's a risk for us too. So you're going to see a whole lot of behind the scenes negotiating. I guarantee you a lot of those GMs are spending a lot of time on the phone right now, Mike, as we speak, trying to sort out who's worth committing to, who's not worth committing to. All those kind of things are going on as we speak.
You talk about those commitments that players might have made to NC2A programs, Dan, and I worry about that a little bit, and I don't think it's being talked about enough. Just imagine you're the player that verbally commits to play at Michigan next year, let's just say. But all of a sudden, the landscape is changing. There's a player that's not thrilled because he's not on the first power play in the CHL, for example, and he wants to go to Michigan. And he's already a higher caliber player than that other player that has verbally committed to Michigan. What happens when Michigan says, you know what, for the betterment of our program, we want this guy that thinks he should be on first power play in the CHL. We'll put him on first power play here in Michigan. And that verbal commit ends up kind of dangling in the breeze there. I think that's something that hasn't been talked about quite enough that may reflect poorly from the NCAA side of this equation.
Yeah, it's a great point, Mike. And the further you dig into this, the more it comes to the surface, right? Because you have that aspect. A lot of things that people don't talk about are what about the transfer agreement? So for a kid to come right now from USHL to CHL midseason, there's a transfer payment has to occur. The NCAA team may say, you're playing in the USHL right now. You're committed to us in 26, 27. We kind of want to see you ramp up your competition next year. We'd like you to go to the OHL, but what are the implications of the OHL agreement that they signed with the club? Is that going to release them before the road age season? From what I'm hearing right now, probably not. So once they commit to the OHL season, they're here till they're through their 19-year-old season. So you might end up bumping that NCAA commitment back a year. And every time you do that, it might work out well for everyone, or it might be a risk because these NCAA teams aren't necessarily committed to that in 2 years. They could say, sorry, we're going a different direction. They could find other players that fill in that gap. Who knows? A lot can change. So if you really want that NCAA commitment, you want to hang on to it, you might be leaning towards going earlier than later, in which case you don't want to be in the CHL at 18 years old. But there's so many factors, and I can just imagine the heads of these players and their agents are just spinning right now with all the possibilities.
I'm glad you brought up that OHL standard player development and scholarship agreement because, yes, a player must play through their 19-year-old season in order to collect on that. And I had previously thought it was prorated. If you didn't finish those 4 years, you'd get 1 year, 2 years, depending on years of service. But that's not the way it works right now. As this landscape begins to change a little bit, I would submit to you that that arrangement is likely going to change. But of course, CHL teams are going to want to be protective of their property, that property being the player. So there's going to have to be guardrails put in place here for both leagues, the NCAA and the CHL, so that there's not this back and forth player movement. Certainly, I would not imagine a scenario whereby a player starts in the NCAA, comes to the CHL, and goes back to the NCAA, that sort of thing. But I guess we'll see how it all shakes out. Here's one of the things that has occurred to me because there's been so much talk about this in the days since the NCAA made its ruling. And I have heard from people who are as gloomy can be about this change and thinks it's going to be a death knell for the Canadian Hockey League. I don't see it that way, but here's just a little bit of what a couple of commissioners who will be impacted by this had to say, including, of course, Brian Crawford, the commissioner of the Ontario Hockey League. And I'll quote, "I'm excited to share the collective enthusiasm expressed league-wide following the NCAA Division I Council's vote affirming the eligibility of Canadian Hockey League players for NCAA Division I hockey programs effective August 1st, 2025. This is a landmark decision that gives OHL players additional avenues and opportunities to pursue their hockey, academic, and life goals upon graduation from our league. It also opens the OHL's doors to talented young student athletes with NCAA aspirations, providing them the opportunity to take their game to the next level in the number one development league in the world." That from Brian Crawford in the OHL. How about Craig Spada, the commissioner in the GOJHL, the Junior B Loop here in Ontario? This announcement that CHL players will now be eligible to compete in the NCAA beginning as early as the 2025-26 season is historic and exciting in development. The GOJHL has continually addressed the young athlete and the pathway. Now, this NCAA announcement identifies a clear, less restrictive pathway of choice. Players at a young age have been forced to make many difficult decisions. This now can alleviate some of that stress in the process. Again, from Craig Spada, the commissioner of the Greater Ontario Junior Hockey League. When I read into OHL commish Brian Crawford's statement, and he points out in the statement that the OHL remains the number one development league in the world, their collective enthusiasm for this. When I read into Craig Spada's statement in Junior B, the GOJHL, that this identifies a less restrictive pathway of choice, alleviating some stress. I don't know that this is just lip service, Dan. I think these guys are genuinely enthusiastic because they believe that the leagues that they are operating right now are superior to the NCAA.
Well, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that, but I think there is an element of these leagues, these commissioners saying what they have to say. They recognize that there is nothing to be gained from going to war with each other over this. Every league is kind of more vulnerable at this point, but every league also has an opportunity at this point. And when you're choosing a pathway, which way are you going to go down? Are you going to hedge your bets and say, no, we're going to war with this league because we think we can win? Are you going to say all the right things, knowing that it could be a mutual pathway where everyone kind of benefits to the best they can? And I think that's kind of what these commissioners are choosing, particularly with the GOJHL and Craig Spada's comments. You know, that's a league that's particularly vulnerable because some of those OHL caliber players who would play there to maintain their eligibility now can jump to the OHL or elsewhere. So it could impact the quality in your league. So you just want to stay on the radar. You want to be a viable league and a viable outlet for some of these players to go. And maybe some of the players that now no longer make the OHL because of these other kids that are going to play there could be sent to the GOJHL or one of these other leagues. So I think there's a huge feeling out process going here, Mike, but I think what everyone's trying to do here is keep their options open, be cordial, get along, and try and find out how they can all exist in this landscape. And I think probably the most telling piece I saw this week, Mike, was with Kitchener Rangers goaltender Jackson Parsons being the first to sign his commitment to play in the NCAA next year after he has fulfilled his full commitment to the OHL, playing his overage year this season. I think what stood out to me was after that was signed, his agent came right out and thanked general manager Mike McKenzie, as well as the folks from Clarkson University and the NCAA for how well they worked together to make an arrangement that worked for the player. And that type of PR, to me, is the best type of thing that can come from this, that players now know that various groups can have their best interests at mind, not only the interests of the organization that they represent, but everyone's best interest. And when you see collaboration like that and cooperation, then there should be better outcomes for the players and hopefully for the leagues as well.
Easier, obviously, after the player has completed the entirety of their CHL commitment, right? Braxton Whitehead, we know, and we talked about already on this OHL podcast this season, from the Regina Pats, made it clear even before the ruling became official, but this writing was on the wall. I think the ruling was long overdue, but Braxton Whitehead said he's going to Arizona State University next year. Parsons, though, the first, you're right, of course, since the ruling was made official. And I had a chance to chat with Jackson over this past weekend, and it just makes so much sense with him committing to Clarkson because it's so close to home for him. But one of the other things we started talking about was the schedule. When I was talking to Jackson, we were about to get on the bus to go play our third game of the weekend up in Oshawa. He said he's been talking to guys in the NCAA. They play Fridays, they play Saturdays. That's it. The rest of the time, you're a student, you're enjoying that college experience and the academic side of it. One guy he had just talked to said he played Friday that weekend. No Saturday game, no Sunday game. Again, at the time, we were about to play our third game of the weekend. Now, we can talk all we want about 3 games in 3 days and the quality of hockey that you get at the end of that, this, that, and the other thing. We've talked about that before on this podcast. But this is one of the reasons, Dan, and I'll swing it back around to why I believe what Brian Crawford said in his statement about the OHL or the CHL being the best development league in the world. A schedule whereby you're only playing Friday one weekend or Friday and Saturday at most is not exactly what we would call a pro schedule when it comes to getting you ready for that next stage of your hockey career, be it the American League, of course, the National Hockey League. To a lesser degree, I think in the European leagues, you're definitely playing less. But the CHL schedule is far better, in my opinion, with the number of games, the travel, the practices, etc., to get you ready for what is to come should pro hockey be your ultimate destination.
Very, very good point, Mike. I think it's absolutely valid. And the argument you always hear from the NCAA side was, well, more time in the weight room, more time for these kids to add bulk, which they're going to need for the pro game. Fair enough, but I think at the end of the day, it's reps, in-game reps. It's the pro schedule, like you said. It's figuring out how to still be good on game 3 on a 3-and-3 weekend, how to coax enough out of your body, how to eat right. All those things that you get from that CHL schedule are that much better. And consider this: if you come down with a flu or a minor injury on a Friday, you have to miss your NCAA game. You're going 2 weeks between games. And ask any player at a competitive level how it feels to miss that much time between games. It's like starting over in training camp a bit. So I absolutely think that's a huge selling point for the CHL, the pro schedule and just kind of what it trains your body to be ready for.
So you alluded earlier to the GOJHL being one of those leagues who might see a more significant impact in all of this than others. USHL, BCHL, let's not forget U Sports in Canada as well. Definitely going to change the landscape there. But I don't look at this right now, Dan, as overwhelmingly negative, like some I referenced earlier who seem to think this might be a death knell for the Canadian Hockey League, particularly some of its smaller markets. I just don't see it that way yet. I also don't see it as overwhelmingly positive. I'm kind of finding myself in the middle. I mean, we could pick nits and find things that we don't like and find things that we do and just keep going on because there are just so many ripples in this pond now that the NCAA has dropped the large stone in it away out there somewhere towards the middle of the pond. But I think the best thing, the absolute best thing, and I really don't think there's an argument about it, that comes from this is that it's giving players more options. And when you're 15 years old, isn't that kind of what you want? Isn't that the fair thing to be doing here? Let's give players more options.
Definitely. And more options available to the players is a good thing for sure. And I don't see this ruling in and of itself as a negative thing at all for the CHL. I think if anything, it's probably going to have more positive impacts. More players are going to land here than previously did. I think a far more impactful thing will be the details of the new NHL CHL agreement through the CBA and some other aspects. But I think we've already started to see it a little bit with European import players, Mike, in the last few years, where you used to see one come in at 17, 18 years old, play their 2-3 years in the OHL, graduate into pro or elsewhere like other players. Lately, we're seeing a lot of one and dones, right? A player comes here for a year or two and then goes back to play with men at 19 years old over in Europe. So they're already exercising those other pathways and options they have. And I think you're going to see more of that with other local players in the CHL going forward. So with more choice and more options comes some challenges for the leagues too. We talked about this in a previous pod, but imagine you're trying to build for a Memorial Cup 2 or 3 years out. You're crafting your roster that way, and then lo and behold, you get to that year, and your top center decides he's actually going to exercise his option to jump somewhere else now. So these are hypotheticals that could happen. Like presumably a player would see the value in playing for a Memorial Cup contender. Having said that, you will get some of that where GMs are caught off guard by not having a player that previously they would have had at their fingertips. So we'll see how this plays out, but I think the more options piece is the one that everyone's going to be able to sleep well at night on, that these players have more options now, more pathways available to them. They're not stuck making a decision at 15 or 16 years old that's going to dictate their path for the next 10.
Can we agree also, based on what you just said and our agreement that the more options, the better, if I can pull out this tired old phrase, pardon me, a rising tide raises all boats, right? This is going to force programs across the Canadian Hockey League, across the NCAA, to BCHL, USHL, take your pick. It's going to force all of these programs to be better because you want to be the most attractive place to that player who suddenly has the option of playing there.
That's a very, very, very true. And I would just add the flip side of that, because yes, it does competition and these challenges force organizations to be better for sure. And I would just caution the other side too, because I think we get a lot of player parents and agents now that might think, well, the world's their oyster. They can play organization off each other. Well, there's a downside to that too, and I think you got to be careful about how you play these organizations, how picky you are about certain situations, and thinking the grass is greener, you can jump. There's something to be said for loyalty too, and who you commit to, and the reputation you'll gain in the industry based on how you honor those commitments. And so there's a lot for parents and agents to consider as well. I don't think it suits either side to feel like they're in the power seat here. You have to work together, and that's the only way it'll work.
Do you think the CHL gets a bad rap in all of this because it's kind of that top tier league? It's the one where all kinds of money is involved?
Yeah, so kind of a two-part answer. Yes, I think the CHL has gotten a bad rap a lot lately. I don't necessarily know it's for those reasons, but I think the CHL has earned some negative criticism over the years for a few things, but it's been way overblown in certain segments, and there's been a lot of people that have targeted the CHL for a lot of reasons, fairly and unfairly. And I think that what we're seeing now, as this comes to light, more of this stuff gets exposed, that this stuff happens everywhere in all organizations. CHL is no worse than any other, and probably no better as well. These organizations are all doing their best now to help these players, and not every situation is going to work out. Not every relationship between a coach and a player is going to work out. But by and large, these organizations are working hard on behalf of the players. So a lot of the negativity you hear, consider the source, is often it's by someone who has a horse in the race and is trying to demean a certain league or pathway, or someone that just doesn't know and is going by historical stuff or rumors or things they hear in the media. But I think there's a lot that people don't understand about these leagues, and most of it positive.
All right. I said earlier that I have something that I think is the most important thing to say in all of this, and I would get to it in a few minutes. I didn't want to give an exact number of minutes because I knew there is a lot of meat on this bone, and we're going to be chewing on it for a while. But have we arrived at a point now? I mean, we've covered so many of these bases. Can I deliver? Is it okay? Do I have your permission, Dan Mahar, to say what I believe to be the most important element of all of this? Is the timing right?
You have my permission. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Nobody knows. Nobody has got any, like, we've just spent 30 minutes speculating, almost 40, talking about what could happen. And all of these things absolutely could, and maybe parts of them will, etc. Nobody knows. Give it 3 to 5 years? Not a sentence. I'm not sentencing anybody to prison, but give it 3 to 5 years to kind of sort itself out. Yes, there's going to be movement. Yes, this is obviously a change. Nobody has the foggiest idea. Like, everybody's got some idea. We've shared a bunch of them. Nobody knows. Nobody knows.
Yeah, they're all educated guesses, but no, you're right. If anyone tries to tell you they do know exactly how this is going to go down, they are wrong, because everyone's going to be dipping toes in the water and figuring out how this is going to go and figuring out how they can exploit the system, because everyone always does that. So things are going to change a lot. But yeah, 3 to 5 years sounds like a good time window to figure it out.
When you find that person that tells you they've got this all figured out, you just tell them Mahar and Farwell say they're a liar. All right. We know that GTA teams have never drawn a lot of fans, but has anyone seen the Brampton Steelheads lately? Because we have, and we're not so sure that we like what we see. That's coming up. Stay with us on the OHL podcast. Okay, let's be honest. I love it when people listen to sports on the radio because it keeps me employed. But nothing beats going to a game live. The roar of the crowd, the thrill of the victory, and you get to be a part of it. Now it's even easier for you to be a part of it with Game Time. And the Game Time app isn't just for live sports. It should be your go-to app for any live event, from concerts to monster truck shows. Now, Game Time even offers Game Time Picks, a new feature that helps you sort through the fluff so you only see incredible deals on the best seats and you're not stuck wasting time searching through thousands of tickets. I'm not the most tech-savvy guy, but the Game Time interface is so easy to use, you'll wonder why you ever tried anything else for tickets. And while I may not be tech-savvy, I am cheap, which is what makes Game Time's super deal the deal for me. Not to mention the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and all-in pricing, so you're not surprised by extra fees at the checkout. If you find a lower price, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And you'll also get a chance to check out a panoramic view from your seat before you buy. It is all right there in the app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code THPN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code THPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Dan, the Brampton Steelheads have lost 4 of their past 5 games. They're sitting last in the Central Division and 8th in the East. Are we worried about the Brampton Steelheads at this moment?
I would say mildly, and I know that's kind of a weak answer, but I'll tell you why. So they've got a lot going on in their lineup. We know that. You picked them first in the East. I picked them second. Everyone's expecting them to be right up there. Lots of talent. So I'll start with the excuses. They've been missing some bodies off and on. Porter Martone missed a game. Buzzsaw Angus McDonnell's missed a few, and I think he's a key piece of their lineup just because he brings everyone into the fight. Now they're without Lucas Carmiras too. It kind of erodes that secondary scoring they've got a bit. Puts a lot of pressure on that top line. So that's the excuse right now. The reasons for concern, I mean, we addressed it in our preseason predictions, but I think Jack Ivankovic is terrific. But that's a lot of weight to put a championship caliber team on the shoulders of a 17-year-old goaltender. And he has been good this year, but I think we're seeing some cracks there about the potential of a kid that young to have to carry a franchise, especially if they're not really clean in front of him. And I watched the last couple Steelhead games, and I'll tell you, some of the veteran D have not been rock solid. Let's put it that way. We've seen some poor coverage mistakes in front of the net. Some veterans, Spencer Sova the other day, missed a couple assignments in front of the net. Fibiger with a couple questionable pinches. So these are good players, but they're playing a little loosey-goosey right now and not identifying the men in the danger area. When you're looking behind the net instead of in front of the net, that's sign number one. You're probably going to get yourself in trouble. So the concern I would say, Mike, for me mostly is something I've felt all along, and that is that I believe the Steelheads are going to have to add a veteran shutdown defender type. Stevie Lescovar's missed some games. That he's a big piece of that for sure, but I don't think James Richmond's going to want to leave much more to chance. I think before the trade deadline, you're going to see them add a big shutdown body on the back end, and once they do, then they're going to be back where they need to be. But just too loosey-goosey right now, and bad things are happening when you make that many coverage mistakes.
It ain't easy being the team with the target on your back from day one, and certainly that's the team in Brampton as one of the preseason darlings. I agree with where you're coming from on that assessment, particularly defensively of late, Dan. I mean, obviously, you look at Martone and Rakoff, who are tearing it up offensively, but it does drop off rather precipitously from there. Next up, you've got Luke Misa in that scoring race in Brampton, and he's a good double-digit points behind here. So you can't have just those two guys tearing it up. And then you look at 28 goals allowed in those past 5 games, 4 of them being losses. Brampton has scored the third most goals in the East, but they've allowed more goals than just 3 other teams. So they're sitting bottom half of the East in terms of goals allowed. They're scoring as you would expect them to. But here's another stat that really stood out to me, and that is that only the Guelph Storm have earned fewer power plays than the Brampton Steelheads. Now, you can look at that and say nobody wants to give that offense the chance on the power play, or you can look at that and say sometimes if you're not working quite hard enough, you don't necessarily earn that power play time. So they're doing fine scoring 5-on-5, but I'm not so sure they're earning the number of power plays they should be. And to your point about getting that shutdown D, whatever it's going to be, and it might be a shutdown D plus, we know that the Brampton Steelheads are not done tinkering. So they can be in 8th place in the conference right now. They can be last in the Central Division right now. We are a quarter of the way through the season. Talk to me again towards the end of January.
Yeah, that's fair. We all expect a turnaround there. I think what I'd like to see it happen sooner or later, because looking at their last couple of home dates, not a lot of bodies in those seats. And I know we don't want to embark on the whole GTA conversation again, but this is a team that we thought might electrify that audience a little. And things have not started out well, and you don't want people turning off the team early. So hoping they turn around soon. But I think both those points you just made are valid, Mike. Teams are avoiding the penalty box with them because they know that's their deadly weapon. And from what I've seen in the last couple of games, I'm not sure those forwards are getting to the dirty areas and grinding quite hard enough to draw those calls. So few things have to change there, but they certainly have the tools in the toolbox to make it happen.
You know, it's not a cheap shot. It's just reality with the teams in the GTA when you talk about the attendance. Let's be honest, if Brampton is as successful as many expect them to be this year and they go far, they're going to have to hope for an Owen Sound like OHL final like they had when Mississauga hosted 15 years ago almost now, and they called at the time, it wasn't Paramount Fine Foods. The old Hershey Center was the Bayshore South because fans from Owen Sound just came down and filled that building. That's what Brampton's going to have to hope for if they make it to an OHL final, that they've got a team they're playing against that's willing to travel well or is close enough geographically to fill that building, because it just doesn't happen. And it is too bad because it is, well, listen, Mississauga was putting together some great teams on the ice as well. People just don't show up. And that makes me think a little bit more. And I forgive the tangent, but Brian Crawford, the new commissioner, is, I might not go so far as to say bullish on expansion, but certainly not shy about the idea. And when he considers the number of players that come out of the GTHL to play in the Ontario Hockey League, why not have another Toronto-based team? I can go back, and I was just chatting with a former Toronto Marlboro this weekend in the form of Mark Napier, who went on to a pretty decent NHL career too. Played for the Marlies, won a Memorial Cup with them back in the day, where you could go to a Marlies game on Saturday afternoon at Maple Leaf Gardens, and then the Leafs would be there at night. How cool would it be to have an OHL team back in the old Maple Leaf Gardens, the Mattamy Event Center, or whatever it's called now? But how cool would that be? Nostalgically, I'd love it. I don't think it's a good idea because the GTA just doesn't love its junior hockey, but those were the days, man. Those were the days.
Well, even with the number of players coming from the GTA, you'd think families and agents and all these people involved really would love to have a team right there where you can see your kid play every weekend. But yeah, for whatever reason, it's the white whale for the OHL, and they just cannot make it work. So maybe Brian Crawford has some magic up his sleeve where he has a plan and a concept to get in place. But I do not see. I've never seen any understanding or support of this league in that market, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and that's why they get the fans that they get, 1,200 or so, friends, family, and scouts. That's who shows up to games right now, junior games anyway, in the GTA. Okay, let's run around some of the other teams that have caught our attention. I might mention the Brantford Bulldogs here. I know they just handed Brampton their most recent loss, but that snapped a 5-game losing skid for the Bulldogs. And one of the things that jumped out at me about Brantford right now is their power play operating at just around 14%. Don't underestimate the impact of the loss of Andreas Carlson on that bench. He joins the Edmonton Oilers this year in a player development role. But I'll tell you what, having seen that guy work day in and day out, he loves his special teams, the power play in particular, and he always found a way to make them successful. That is a number that is glaring to me. And then, of course, the Peterborough Petes get their first win this past week. They are on pace for 4 on the season. Oh boy, a quarter of the way. They've got 1 in the win column. And I guess the Guelph Storm were listening last week when we were knocking them just a little bit. They win back-to-back games, and then they hang a 7 on the London Knights, 4 from Max Nemesnikov, and they still come up short in an 8-7 loss to London. But Guelph seems to have found a little something in the past week anyway.
Yeah, so I'll start with Peterborough and just say they're going to win more than 4, Mike. And you can see they're starting to get back to Rob Wilson.
Are you sure? Are you sure about this?
I am positive. Peterborough fans, you've seen it like I've seen it. You're in the games lately. You're keeping the scores down. You've had some better efforts. You're getting there. It's gonna be more than 4 wins. On the Guelph side, having watched that Guelph London game, it was like last shot wins. Just again, you talk about coverage mistakes galore on both teams. It was just chance after chance. I felt sorry for the goaltenders. Usually in an 8-7 game, you kind of say, wow, the goalies didn't show up, but it was more than that. And Guelph has some really positive signs, obviously, with their attacks coming around. You see Max Nemesnikov, 4 goals to get him up to 6 on the season. So that game might just kind of awaken a player who should be a very dynamic player in this league, should be putting up big numbers. So he was sleepwalking through his first month of the season. Maybe this will get him going. And as you add more offensive elements into that lineup, there's more you can do with it. But boy, they're going to have to defend better than I saw in that game. And that's the ultimate thing with coaching in this league is how do you slow down these offenses? How do you win the neutral zone? How do you prevent that? And for me, when I'm seeing some of these teams, the Brantfords, the Steelheads, the Guelphs, it's that net front coverage. Everything starts with your net front coverage. Guard the house, work out from there. And those teams are not guarding the house right now.
Or if you're the London Knights, you know Dale Hunter doesn't love surrendering 7 in a last shot wins kind of game. 9 in a row, though, for London. Are they just going to keep doing London-like things? Do you expect more happening down there in the Forest City as this season goes on?
Oh yeah, I'm not. No one's ever worried about London. I see that game. Yeah, it was sloppy. Dale Hunter's going to hate it. But that third line had a career game. They dominated that game, and you can say, okay, Barkey, Cowan, you guys have a rest tonight. We're going to take this one. You see Reed with his first couple goals of the season. That kind of depth and that kind of improvement from the depth players over the year that always floats London's boat. And yeah, they're going to look at that and say, here's what we have to do better. It's going to be pretty obvious from that game, but they still won it, and it's the type of thing that London does through the course of the year. So no concern whatsoever for me on London. They're going to have to defend better and get a couple more saves, sure, but they will.
I know you wanted to give a little love to the Limestone City this week too, and the first place Kingston Frontenacs.
Yeah, I mean Kingston's been one of those centers that, for as long as I can remember, is kind of tinged with negativity or but because they never quite get over the hump, even when they have good rosters. They make their buyer at the deadline last year kind of go quickly and quietly. So there's always kind of that, really, are we buying this in Kingston? Quietly, they have been really good, especially lately. And you look at that lineup, I mean, Cedric Guindon starting to fire again. You get Hayes contributing. You got McGowan putting up a first start performance in the last week. There's a lot of elements in that lineup that are coming around. They always have solid import players with their Finnish connection. Vakari had a strong couple games lately. And when you steamroll some good teams like they have lately, look out for those Frontenacs. I think they're starting to send a message to the league, and I'd love to see them continue it because that's a city that deserves it.
It's a well-coached team as well, and it's fun to see them. And I saw, well, actually, now that I think of it, it was a school day game, I'm pretty sure, over 5,000 fans. I got excited because I don't understand why they don't get more support there. It seems to me the ideal market. They've got a great arena. And a little bit like the GTA we were talking about earlier, for some reason, they just draw flies up there at Slush Puppy Place.
And it's a great arena, right, Mike? It's in the great arena, great location. I mean, after the game, a ton of great restaurants, great scenery along the waterfront there. Great experience. I mean, you won't get better value for your Sunday afternoon or Friday night or whatever night you choose to go there. So yeah, it should be drawing well, and maybe this will be the team to do it.
I may have had to deal with 3 games in 3 days this weekend, but I'll take the travel schedule I just had any weekend of the year, even if it is a 3-3. More on that in a moment. And our prospects of the week still to come on the OHL podcast. Speaking of still to come, my favorite holiday of the year is on the way. Thanksgiving. I know in Canada, we celebrate it in October. In the United States, we celebrate it in November. And I like to celebrate both because I love the holiday so much. And that means also Black Friday, Cyber Monday is getting closer, and you can get an amazing deal that you would not normally get, except with Raycon. Because with Raycon, you get an amazing deal on premium audio every day of the year. But that doesn't mean they're not having any sales for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Far from it, in fact. They're actually doubling down on their amazing value by offering up to 30% site-wide to listeners and viewers of this podcast. A Black Friday, Cyber Monday deal you'll appreciate every day. Raycon's everyday earbuds, especially if you haven't checked out their latest model, which includes plenty of new features that make them even more of a must-have for any audio lover. They now feature a 32-hour battery life and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with 2 devices at once. Raycon's everyday earbuds also come with active noise cancellation. That is a feature that is a must-have for me on those long bus rides, but one that can be difficult to find at an accessible price point until now. Because that's another thing. Although Raycon's quality rivals some of the biggest names in premium audio, Raycons start at just half the price as the other guys. So they're already an incredible deal, even before you factor in their Black Friday, Cyber Monday offer of up to 30% off site wide. Trust me, as a bit of an audiophile, you will love the sound quality of these earbuds. Raycon's everyday earbuds are also available in a variety of vibrant colors, so you don't have to just have the standard issue white or black earbuds sticking out of your ears. I'm a big fan of blue. I think you'll like them too. Now is the perfect time to scoop them up if you haven't already, and don't worry if you are not as impressed as I am. Raycon offers a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you really can't lose. It's time to save big for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Go to buyraycon.com/THPN today to get up to 30% off site-wide. That's right. You'll get up to 30% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/THPN. Dan, my weekend of travel took me to Owen Sound, where they have the absolute best French fries in the league. Don't at me. Don't fight me. I'm telling you the truth. Love the fries. Dip them in ketchup. You're all set. And then I go to Oshawa on Sunday. Not bad trips, couple hours both ways. But Oshawa, unfortunately, comes with the worst walk in the league. So you go from best fries on Saturday night to the worst walk on Sunday, where you're on this catwalk up above the score clock, in the rafters looking down on everything just to get to your broadcast location. They try my courage every time I go to Oshawa.
I did see the video you posted, Mike, and I'm thinking of opportunities here for this podcast. So the charity bout with Eric Boulton,
Yep.
maybe, but we could have you rappel down from that boxed ice level after the game. No? All right,
No.
I'm just thinking because like it is. Think of the view you'd get, Mike.
That's true. And you know what? Actually, now you're onto something, because the more viewers we can get on this YouTube channel, the better. If you're not on our YouTube channel, by the way, get on the YouTube channel at the OHL podcast. I could rappel down. That video would get probably enough views. Like our number. Okay, I'm thinking about it. Good thing I only go back once a year. You also, when you go to Oshawa, you get to see the incomparable Neil Luxton, who's the off-ice game crew official. And I'll tell you what, like, he's the supervisor there. And when's the last time you've heard about, shot clock controversies or 3-star controversies or anything? Like, Neil runs such a tidy ship up there. He's a huge fan of the game. And I probably shouldn't even name him like this, because those are the kinds of people behind the scenes in this league that do such great work that's why you don't hear their names, because they're just quietly going about their business night in and night out. But Neil is such a beauty, and it was great to run into him this weekend and catch up for a little bit. I really wish we got to Oshawa more often, because that is a well-run organization. You want to talk about a beautiful building to watch junior hockey in. Holy Hannah, the Tribute Community Center is a gem. Great crowd for a really good game between the Rangers and Gens on Sunday night.
Yeah, and it's not really that far from anywhere. Right, you can get.
Good point. You
have to deal with the GTA and traffic depending where you're coming from, but still, it's a fairly easy jaunt from most places.
All right, let's get into those prospects of the week. It's how we like to leave you every week. Dan, who do you have for your prospect this week?
All right, well, we've got a guy that I don't expect is going to have to wait too long to hear his name called the NHL draft next year, and that is Malcolm Spence on the Erie Otters. And, I was kind of looking for something from him early in the year, and Erie was a little bit slow to get their offensive wheels going. Well, now they're rolling, and you see Malcolm Spence is one of the big drivers. 9 points the last 5 games, 16 in the last 10, starting to ramp up that production. And when he gets his wheels going, which I think is a big part of his game, and gets to the net front, the production starts to follow. And when it follows for him, it follows for the whole team, as you've seen Erie lay a couple beatings lately on teams. And Malcolm Spence is going to be a big part of it. It's going to be a good power forward for some NHL team come the spring. So that's my guy this week. Mike, who you got?
All right. I'm staying in the Western Conference as well, and I'm taking Brady Martin this week as my prospect of the week. Maybe a little bit of bias because I got to see him with a firsthand viewing on Friday night. But I think that's also the reason, because when you get live eyes on a guy, you see a player like Brady Martin who, on a relatively listless night for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds in a 4-0 loss at Kitchener, he continued to stand out when he was on the ice. He had some bite to his game. He looks stronger and faster this year compared to last. So clearly he's been working off the ice as well. But you give me a guy in a game that the team's not really in, and he's still got that much gas in the tank. And by gas, I mean GAS, give a bleep level. I absolutely love to see it. And then he follows that up 24 hours later on the road, getting on the bus right after the game in Kitchener to drive down to Flint with the team, and he puts up a career high 4 points the next night with 2 goals and 2 assists. He's had 3 a couple of times, but 4 points for Brady Martin in that win over Flint, 24 hours after a bad loss in Kitchener that had followed a bad loss versus London earlier in the week. So you put those two things together, and you bring Brady Martin out for a career high after he had showed me more than most other players on the ice on the Friday night, and I make Brady Martin my prospect of the week.
Yeah, that's a kid who just gets it, right? You watch him play, and scouts are going to be drilling because they see the skill, they see the improvement with his skating and skill game. They're looking for maybe a little snarl, and he showed it in spades the last couple times I've seen him play. There's no quit there. He doesn't like losing. Pro scouts are going to love that. And then another kid who's going to see his name called quite early in this draft.
I would think the same. I think both guys that we just talked about this week may very well hear themselves among the first 32 next June, but we shall see. Do you think we covered enough of the bases with the NCAA ruling this week? I mean, could there have been a base? Anybody want to steal a base? You can send us an email anytime. ohlpodcast@rogers.com.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to cover, a lot of unknowns, but we're getting all kinds of great questions from the audience and from others. So yeah, send them in, and Mike and I will take our best guesses, because that's all they are.
It's all they are. Because if it's one thing we know for sure, it's that nobody knows how this all plays out. You can find Dan on X at his name, Dan Mahar. I am at Farwell_OHL. Please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, tell a friend. And thanks so much for listening to the OHL podcast. We're back next week.